And in my book, I write about being grateful for those times when you think it's a setback.
Yeah.
And it's not. Had I not done this to my knee, I'm not sitting here talking to you, Rodney. When you step on that court with hate and a thought of hate and a thought of us versus them, there's no way you're going to have an outcome of joy, which is ultimately what coaching is. To teach and to have an outcome of joy.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Coach Rodo's Winning Regardless podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. I think this is probably the only the second female that we've been lucky enough to have on our podcast today. Mrs. Jeanne Hess, who is big into the community, I'm just going to let her tell you about herself. Why don't you tell?
I'm big into the community, Rodney. Well, Jim and I moved here in 1982. I think he told you that on his podcast, so I won't redouble that. We moved here in 1982 so he could be a coach at Western Michigan University. And I was fresh out of the University of Michigan. And I found a coaching job having played volleyball at University of Michigan. Found a coaching job at Kalamazoo Central for 2 years. And after that, Kalamazoo College came knocking and said, "Hey, do you want to coach here?" Rala Anderson, he's a gem. He's an icon at Kalamazoo College. And I played my volleyball games at Anderson Athletic Center. So I began my career there in 1984, walked into the gym, 7.5 months pregnant with Andrew, my oldest. And the girls looked at me and they're like, "Who are you?" "Well, I'm your coach." Just going to carry this volleyball around till the end of the season. He was born 6 days after our last game of the first season. So now I know how long it's been since I started. So he's 41. And so anyway, I had a wonderful career coaching volleyball at Kalamazoo College. Along the way, I took on a professor hat, professor of physical education. I ended up chairing that department for the last 15 years or so of my career. Served as an associate chaplain at Kalamazoo College and also an assistant softball and basketball coach.
Oh, wow.
For women's softball and women's basketball coach. So pretty much did it all there at K and was pretty happy there until I retired in 2019.
Yeah.
And then Bobby Hopewell came along and he said, "Hey, what are you doing when you retire? Why don't you run for city commission?" Like, okay, what's the time commitment there? Because I plan on being retired.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, there's 2 meetings a month," and that which was true. And there's 2 plus this one plus that one plus that one plus that one. There are a lot of meetings a month, and I wouldn't have it in either way. I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity to intersect with the community. So anyway, so that's where I am right now, current city commissioner and grandmother, mother, wife, author, whatever.
So now you played volleyball at U of M. What was that like, coming up, and how'd you find yourself at U of M on the volleyball team?
It's pretty much I woke up and found myself there. No, I was raised in Plymouth, which is out between Ann Arbor and Detroit. And interestingly enough, applied to both Michigan and Western when I was coming out of high school, and decided on Michigan to room with my friend from Plymouth, and was going to study science. I was supposed to be a doctor. I was going to study pre-med, and my mom called, and we hadn't begun classes yet. We had kind of in an orientation process, and And she said, I just read in the Free Press that if you play a sport at the University of Michigan for 2 years, your junior year, you can get a scholarship. This was in 1976. So like Title IX had been signed in 1972, and Michigan started their varsity team in 73. So this was in 1976, and it would be the third varsity team. And she goes, I said, Mom, what sport am I supposed to play? Because I ran track and I played volleyball in high school. And she said, I made some phone calls, and you're going to go to this tryout at this time tomorrow night. Okay, I'll do that. Best thing in my life ever. We talk about these gentle nudges from your parents. Like my mom knows me. My mom is not an athlete. My mom didn't really care for my athlete self because she was as far from an athlete as there was. But she honored the fact that I was. And so she knew who I was. So she said, you go be an athlete. And the cool thing was that the coach at the time, Sandy Vong, and Sandy is still my coach. Sandy is like 97 years old, and he's still my coach. Came to Michigan from Shanghai in the 50s, got his degree, and stayed. He's an engineer and smartest man I know. But he saw something in me that I hadn't seen yet. He saw that athlete piece of me, and he said, you're going to be on our team. And I literally found myself on this team. And the process in the early 70s is so much different than it is today.
Yes, I can imagine.
But to know that I was part of that evolution of sport at Michigan and of women's sport at Michigan and women's sport in general is where I hang my hat. And I really, I'm grateful to Sandy for having seen that, because I could play. I played volleyball in high school, but I was coached by the baseball coach. So,
Yeah.
he taught me to love the game.
So with, Title IX being, I mean, three and a half years is pretty new.
Very new.
So with that being very new in college athletics, as far as, the equality of women playing, how did that affect, you guys' games, you guys' practices, your preparations, and pretty much the treatment that you receive?
Well, we saw the football players and the basketball players around campus, but we were nowhere near equal. We had to beg for a second set of uniforms. Like the uniforms that I first wore were like made of wool, and I overheated so many times. No, we saw gross inequality. We played in a campus rec building, and during our games, our varsity contests, there were people running around the track, around the rec building, and people playing basketball in the next court. And they'd pull out a little set of bleachers for us. But the inequalities were very stark. We didn't have a dedicated locker room or training room. I had to go to the training room. Now, this is a funny story. I had to go to be trained to get my shoulder heated at the training room, which was underneath, for the women, was underneath the baseball stadium on the other side of campus, like on South Campus. I lived on North Campus, took a bus down to South Campus, trained my shoulder. I don't know whether I would walk or bus back up to practice, but yeah. And so then, and fast forward many, many years, Andrew, our son, is being recruited by the University of Michigan. And we go into what had been the training room, which was now the baseball coach's office. I'm like, I sat in the hot tub here, people. It was it was just such a bizarre thing, seeing the evolution of the baseball program, but seeing the evolution of volleyball as well. So now volleyball plays in Chrysler Arena now, and they do have their own dedicated facility, which they really need to upgrade. But when they're not playing at Chrysler, but they compete on a national level, and they're doing great. I love having watched that. But then I have a thread through that in Sandy, again, still my coach, and he's still visits. He still is at every practice in the spring and the fall. And every now and then we'll text or we'll call, and I'll see him at games, and he's just there. He's my Yoda. He's a silent visionary, engineer brain, and he has invented so many things that help the sport and advance the sport. Like when he was coaching us, another inequality, he was a part-time coach. He had 6 children. His wife worked full-time. He had 6 children at home, and his job was at Ford as an engineer, and he has so many patents on all the glass in Ford vehicles. He still holds those patents. So Sandy worked 8 to 5, 8 to 4, went home, would have dinner with his family, and then that's what our practices had to be, from 7 to 10 at night.
Oh, wow.
And so really, I mean, I was my first 2 years studying science. I was still on that pre-med track, and it got to be a lot with, and then the travel, because we traveled in vans and mostly around the state. We didn't do this national travel like they do now, but we would travel in vans and get home late at night. It was really difficult to keep grades and to keep up the science track as well as my athletic track. So something shifted, and I moved into. Then it was physical therapy, but then I heard that if you were in physical therapy, they had to have labs and you couldn't be on the team. I'm like, oh no, I got to be on the team. And so then exercise science came calling, and they had a wonderful program in exercise science at Michigan. So I did that and graduated in 1980 and tore my ACL.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh, wow.
so then that set me back, and that took my plans. I was going to be an athletic trainer. And that, God said, that's not happening. That's not going to happen. You're going to move home in 1980 when you tore your ACL. Ever torn an ACL there?
Oh, yeah. I
Rodney?
tore mine in 92. Yep.
I think we all have an ACL story.
Yeah.
I have 2 ACL stories. But so I went to in 80. They put a cast from thigh to ankle.
Ooh.
A bent cast from thigh to ankle without surgery, like nothing. It was just like
Just in the cast.
it was a cast. I had to move home. I had graduated. I'd graduated. I spent 4 years in Ann Arbor, and I had to go move home. And I had to quit my job that I had, and my roommate and our the setter on my team at the time, called me up one day, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, sitting here, not doing anything. She goes, move back to Ann Arbor and come be my assistant coach. She said, I got a job coaching at Gabriel Richard High School, which was the Catholic high school in Ann Arbor. Oh, well, sounds better than sitting here. So I crutch into the gym the first day, and the girls basketball coach went walking by and went, oh, his name is Jeanne Hess. So we met in the gym, and I started a coaching career, and that's all she wrote. So I'm grateful for every single step from, Richard Nixon signing Title IX in 1972 to Sandy saying yes to me, to and in my book I write about being grateful for those times when you think it's a setback.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's like, wow, had I not done this to my knee, I'm not sitting here talking to you, Rodney.
That's true.
It got me to a higher place. And so now when something happens, you just say, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, no, thanks for coming. So you get here in 84, you take over volleyball at K College.
Mhm.
What, I mean, like, was it a case where there weren't enough players, or they just didn't have the coach and they just thought they were just throwing you a bone? Or, had you been, because you came from high school straight to K College, correct?
Yeah, I was at Kalamazoo Central for 2 years.
Okay.
And then, it was, and again, in 1984, it was more like high school. They were throwing me a bone. It was, and Kalamazoo College hadn't yet caught up in '84 to the Title IX
Okay.
of everything. I had a mentor in Tish Lovelace, and she was the first women's athletic director at K College. Love her, respect her. She fought for these women from the early 70s all the way through. She fought for a place, and she coached everything from tennis to field hockey and to basketball, volleyball. She started the swimming team. She started all the teams. She was the pioneer.
Okay.
And then Lynn Maurer came along too, and Lynn was my direct supervisor after that. And they were very powerful women in my life. So yeah, I walk into the gym and it was just starting at square one. Kay had a coach every year for 6 years, a new coach it was hard to keep a coach. It's part-time, I think they paid me $1,500 or something like that. You never do it for the money.
Right.
Never do it for the money, just like city commission. You
That's
don't
a
do that for
year,
the money.
right.
But yeah, I said, like, I like this. I love hanging around with these women, these women that chose to go to Kalamazoo College. They have a vision for their life. They're intelligent, they're bright, they're funny. And so being with them was like being on my team. So I started it there in '84 and retired in 2019. And along that time, I went from being their sister to being their mother. And then when I retired, it was like, it's time to go. I'm their grandma,
Right.
Like it's hard to get over that generational separation.
Yeah.
And so they didn't want their grandma coaching them. And, keeping up with the social media, keeping up with all this and all of the things that had to be done, all the fundraising was really difficult. However, I was able to, so K College is known for its study abroad program.
Mm-hmm.
They students at the time, I think it was like 95% of the students would study abroad. And I thought, okay, if students in general study abroad, why should my team also not study abroad, study volleyball around the world?
Right.
Why should they not know the world through sport? And Sandy, God bless him, he was, again, part of this. There was a team that was going to visit from China that was supposed to go to University of Dayton and be hosted there for a week. But they got a new coach, and the new coach said, Sandy called me up. He's like, can you take this team from China for a week? Okay. So we did. And it was, again, life-changing. And they said, you are coming back to visit us. I'm like, okay. So that next summer, we went to Beijing and Shanghai for 2 weeks and played. And really, I see your swear jar here, but we lost. But got so many connections there and learned so much. And you either win or you learn. So we learned a lot.
Yeah.
And the NCAA was allowing international travel with teams every 3 years. So that was in 2009. And then in 2012, we were able to go to Costa Rica. Kalamazoo College has a study abroad site in Costa Rica. Hooked us up there. We all did homestays. It was, again, a wonderful learning experience. Again, we won a few games down there, but still not enough. We did clinics for the kids. We just found joy in those games down there.
Oh, yeah.
And then Lamobo Shabazz came in and began to coach our men's soccer team, and he liked this idea of traveling with the teams. He's like, hey, can my team travel? Can our teams travel together? Sure. So he actually was born in Trinidad. So Kalamazoo College has a study abroad site in Trinidad and Tobago. So we went there for 2 weeks. And they played their soccer. We played our volleyball. We learned all about the country and had some fun. And then lastly, before I retired, we took a big one to South Africa. And it was amazing. we worked with the ARCA Center for Social Justice Leadership at K. We learned all about apartheid.
Yeah. Did you go to Robben Island?
We did go to Robben Island.
Yeah.
And we were able to see Nelson Mandela's cell.
Yeah, we went.
Oh my God.
It's great. It's where we had, when we went, our tour guide was actually in prison with Nelson Mandela.
I think that might have been our
Might have been the little short guy. Yeah.
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 Oh, the waves were kind of high in the boat on the way over there.
Oh.
A few of the girls got a little sick.
So that happened to you, and of course, with having kids and things, talk to us a little bit about, your book. What did you write that when you after, or did you write it during, or, because I know you said that, you had a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
So
kind of. So the spiritual part of it came. It's always been with me, but as a child and being raised both Catholic and Episcopalian, I've had this, churchy life. And but at K, it was in 1999. At K, there was a murder-suicide.
Oh, wow.
On campus, and it became very clear to the administration that they needed more. For lack of better words, student huggers. Like, we needed more people to just be there for and with the students. And after a lengthy search and looking around campus for somebody that knew how to hug students, they're like, that's you. So I was named also an associate chaplain. I was still chair of the department and still the volleyball coach. So I'm doing this work up in the chapel. I'm doing work up the hill and down the hill at K College, right? And doing the work in the gym, doing the work at the chapel. And I had to find a way. So that was in 2000 that I started with that. And I had to find a way to marry my thoughts about sport and spirituality. And K, being the secular institution it is, like we're in a conference with very religious institutions.
Yes. Calvin, Hope,
St. Mary's. Right. And so, I saw them do their pregame a little bit differently. They were able to do a lot. And so I had to, I had to think about this and to make sense of it and to really teach, which is ultimately what coaching is, to teach and to have an outcome of joy, which I saw them having regardless of the score on the scoreboard. Mm-hmm. We needed to take the thought that they were having about a particular thing, turn it into a word, and then the meaning that you put on that word helped shape your outcome. So thought to form, right? And I took 12 words that are commonly used in sport and defined them back to their etymological root, Latin or Greek, and really made sense out of these words. And I thought it was just for sport. These were words that we used in sport, right?
Right.
But now that I'm on city commission, I use these words more than ever.
Yeah?
Yeah. So the first one that made my editor, the Bob Weir, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Robert Weir. He writes for Encore now, but like he was my editor, and he said yes. He said, hey, you got something here. You have something here. Another gentle nudge. Like these people in your life. You've got these people that kind of push you forward. And Robert said, yeah, you got something here. And so competition. Let's talk about competition.
Right.
When you think of competition, what do you think of?
Versus. Me versus you, them versus us.
Yes. This.
Yeah.
Us versus them. Which is, where can we see that happening on a national level? Right? So as ultimately you can continue to extrapolate it, but in sport, us versus them. And I was hearing my team not care for other teams. They were like judging, and they were saying, we don't like them, we hate them. And like when you step on that court with hate and a thought of hate and a thought of us versus them, there's no way you're going to have an outcome of joy.
No.
So I decided to say, okay, let me go back to my Latin. I took 5 years of Latin. Don't ask me why. I was supposed to be a doctor, right? I was supposed to know the Latin words for everything. But competere means to work with. To work with. So competition, redefining competition into working with. So instead of doing this, where the only way if you win is to eliminate another, you work with. And regardless of who wins and the score on the scoreboard, you make each other better. Iron sharpens iron, right?
Right.
And so you just make each other better. And then the outcome is one of learning, one of having worked together towards something greater than yourself, and ultimately one of joy. So competition is a word I talk about a lot, because again, the us versus them that we see around us every day.
Every day.
We want to eliminate them, and then you look at this violence, right? You see the political violence that's happening, and that is a result of thinking that competition is us versus them, and the only way that you win is to eliminate the other. And the easiest way to eliminate another is with a gun, right? So anyway, competition was the first one that I wrote about, and then there's 11 more that really make sense to me as I continue to talk. And the two other ones that I'd like to mention here, community, because, oh my goodness, I was a part of the volleyball community. I was on a national board for American Volleyball Coaches Association representing Division III. So I was a Division III community of volleyball coaches. I knew all the Division III coaches in the country, and having charge of that community. Like, community, though, is a verb, and it literally means to have charge of together. And like, to have charge of this together, it doesn't mean I just show up and sit there and watch.
I listen.
No, it means I got to do something.
Yeah.
It means I got to suit up and I got to show up and I got to do. So that it's a verb. It's a part of, if I'm going to be a part of this community, that I have to work to make it better, to make it more whole, to help people learn in it. So
see now, my buddy Vic Ledbetter, he's on the city commission out in Portage. So now I got to stop giving him crap, because we always say, you coming to golf? No, I got a city commission meeting. No, man, you don't got no meetings. And now with you just sitting here telling me all of this, I have no validation. He has all the validation in the world.
Vic, you go to your commission meetings and you show up and you suit up on behalf of Portage. Don't listen to this guy.
Oh, man.
Either that or you just got to get a different night for golf.
Yeah, well, it's funny because he's always doing a lot, and to having a friend on the commission, you get to, when things come out, like our trash thing that just came out.
Yes.
I had no idea about it until he explained it to me and broke it down to me. And my wife said something very interesting, because they didn't win. We won't know.
Right.
So my wife says they might have had a chance had they done it before the first bill came out.
Oh.
Once everybody saw how much cheaper their bill was,
right?
The city hall wasn't even packed no more.
Right. Yeah. So that brings me to the third word I wanted to that I talk about a lot and use a lot is education.
Yes.
So there really is an element of education on commission with the city folks, and people not understanding why we do what we do. If I say parking or bike lanes, what do you say? Don't.
I'll listen to you.
I'm sure Vic gets that down in Portage too.
Oh, yeah.
But no, this education, the word means to draw forth. So like when you hear education, it's like, oh, I'm going to go up and I'm going to go to class. They're going to give me a diploma, and then I can do the next thing. I can get on with my life. Education happens every day.
Yes.
You become a better version of yourself on a daily basis. And it's from different people drawing forth different things from you. What's in there? What's in there? What's in there? And if I'm a good coach, I look at my players and I'm like, there's something different in you than there is in you, than there is in you.
Yes.
And there's a different way to draw that forth from them.
Yes. Yes.
Some you got to yell at. Some you got to hug.
Yep.
But how do I draw forth their better self? And how do they step across that stage after graduating from Kalamazoo College? How do they walk across that stage being the best version of themselves at that point in time that they can? How can I participate in that?
Yeah.
And that I had the privilege of participating in helping draw that forth from them.
Yes.
But like, so in the city now too, the best thing we can do for the people of Kalamazoo is to educate them about what it is the city does and why, and then where your responsibility lies in being a part of this community, right? So what are you going to do? Where are you going to pick up your mantle, and what is your thing that you can give to this community?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's just not all the city government.
No, it is not.
No, it's not.
Now, I like to end everything on 2 questions. First question, what does winning regardless mean to Jeanne Hess?
Well, it's what I was always tell the players: you either win or you learn. Whatever you do in your life, if you show up fully and you do your best and you have your best self drawn forth, doesn't matter the score. Does not matter the score. It matters, did you find joy? Did you feel joy? So winning regardless, I'm going to feel joy regardless because I was able to compete, because I was given this opportunity to compete and to learn. Sport is a great way, a man-made way, a woman-made, a person-made way of delivering education, of receiving education, because ultimately that's what it is. I mean, there's a lot of products made around sport now, but like sport in itself is a man-made construct about how we engage with one another as humans.
Yes.
So if we engage with meaning and with purpose and with an awareness of what it is we're doing and why, we can't help but find joy in the game. And that's winning to me.
That's all of those are fabulous points, because that's a lot of what I talk about when I'm doing single podcasts too. I talk about a lot of those same things as far as, finding that every player you can find something in, because they're all different.
Yeah.
My grandmother used to always tell us, don't be like somebody else because they're already taken. So, yeah.
Your grandma was a wise woman.
Right. So, it's one of those. Now, the second thing that I like to ask is, we all have, like a favorite saying. Like mine is, I love to send the elevator back down. That's one of my favorite things to do. That's why I love to help Lincoln Elementary out the way that we do, because, it's probably one of the neediest schools in our area. So that's where we send our elevator. So what is your...
Wow. I have to think about that, but I help out Woodward.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So they're getting my elevator.
Yeah, there you go.
Although they're on the second floor. It's all joy.
Yeah.
It's all joy. In the end.
Yeah.
Live as if. Live as if.
Live as if.
Live as if.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, because, like it was once said, tomorrow doesn't exist. So you have to live as if.
As if today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's all joy. It's all joy.
Because I like I like that one, and we love Von's. Von said that his dad told him at an early age, because he was an Air Force guy, give it what it's worth.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? I don't have time to listen to you. So tell me what I need to know.
Right.
Give it what it's worth, and then let's move on.
Well, and suit up and show up.
That's it. There you go.
Suit up and show up. You get, because you're sitting there in that locker room, and at the end of my career, Jim was very gracious and helped raise some money to create a volleyball locker room at Kalamazoo
College. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they go in there and they prepare, but that's where they suit up,
Mm-hmm.
and they suit up in there, but that's where they're so close as a team. And then you get out into the gym and you show up. You suit
Yes.
up and you show up.
Yes.
And that's something, but live as if and really just it's all about knowing yourself. Who said that? One of those great
Yeah,
philosophers. Know
right.
thyself.
Right.
I think it was Socrates.
Yeah.
Know thyself. But I mean, I can't help people if I don't show up first for myself.
That's it.
Yeah.
Got to be in a healthy mind state for others.
Amen.
Well, Jeannie, I would like to thank you for coming to the podcast today. It was wonderful having you on here. Seriously, you are the first female coach professor, because you are city councilwoman, that's blessed our podcast. So we're very happy to have you. And I can't wait to see the responses from, the female audience, to hear from a female who dealt with Title IX, who understands what it took for them to be able to do what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Not equally, but equally.
Differently, equally.
There you
Differently,
go.
equally. So, having the same opportunity. And I feel like that's what I've been doing my entire career, is showing up in the early days first and really, breaking that glass ceiling and everywhere that I show up.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
But I'm really grateful to you for extending the invitation.
Oh, I'm grateful for you for coming.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for watching Winning Regardless, Coach Rodo's podcast with our guest today, Jeanne Hess.